Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming this morning, and we are certainly we will begin our today's section. And today we have two sections as well. The morning section is children's environmental health. The afternoon section is environmental health interventions. And I would like to introduce the chairperson of this section. The chairperson of the third section is Dr. Mei Huang Wu, the superintendent of National Taiwan University Children's Hospital. She obtained her MD and PhD degree at National Taiwan University and also completed her EMBA from National Taiwan University. She is an expert in the cardiac electrophysiology, from cellular to cardiac catheterization. She is a pioneer in pediatric transcatheter arrhythmia therapy. Besides, her research foresight covers widely the spectrum of congenital heart disease and acquired heart disease in children. Now, we would like to welcome Dr. Wu to host this section.
Our distinguished guests, my dear colleagues, and ladies and gentlemen, good morning. And welcome to the third session of the International Symposium of Environmental Medicine in 2015. And it's my greatest honor and pleasure to moderate this session, which I have 4 speakers, all are world-famous experts in this field. And the first talk will be delivered by Dr. Peter van der Hazel. Dr. Professor Peter van der Hazel received his MD from University of Amsterdam. He is co-founder of International Coordinator of International Network for Children's Health, Environment, and Safety. He is also president of Health and Environment Alliance since 2012. He has received advanced training in management of non-profit organizations, epidemiology, medical statistics, radiation safety, corporate environmental care, and project management. He has coordinated several EU-funded projects such as PINCH, CHESS, and Climate TRAP. And the talk Dr. Peter van der Hazel will give today is the importance of children's environmental health to the world. It's such a critical issue in an era of low birth rates. Please join me to welcome Professor Hazel.
Okay, good morning everybody. How do I start this one? Yes, I would like to talk about children's environmental health, and I would like also to make it a little bit as a personal thing, looking at different perspectives. In my profession, I'm wearing different kinds of hats. I would like to show you how I see children's environmental health from the perspective of the child, namely myself. As a scientist, I would like to say something when I'm wearing my policy hat. And I would also like to talk about children as environmental refugees. This is as a child, being exposed to already environmental health. For example, I will talk about my parents. When I was young, my mother was one of those people using de-ethyl silver so that makes me a dead son. Among with also a lot of women in the world who are a dad's daughter. I don't see much effects with me, but I think this has been really a problem in the past when a lot of people of our generation were parents have been swallowing that as a kind of medication. And if you see the advertisement in the part, it was really prevention of everything. It was given to every woman, pregnant woman in the world or in the Western world. I don't know about AIDS, but it has been used a lot there. But this was really, has been really a big problem. My parents also have been exposed to air pollution. We have been seeing these pictures, the London fog, other fog. It's not only been pollution in London. I think there were many places in Europe where we have a lot of air pollution. So when I was born, I think they lived in an era in Europe where there was a lot of air pollution. So that means that even prenatally, I was already being exposed to air pollution, giving exposure to polyaromatic hydrocarbons, to PM2.5, nitrogen oxide. And what we see now with the knowledge we have now, that we might see that it has some effects on neuropsychological development of my brain. Also, we know more now that children exposed to traffic-related pollutants during pregnancy or infancy, also that the brain neocortex, when it is rapidly developing, also shows cognitive delay. So who knows what would have happened to my brain if I wouldn't have been exposed during that time. Also, we know more now that exposure to PAH, air pollutants, also contributes to slower processing speed, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder symptoms. So this is all studies that at that time we didn't know. So if our parents, my parents would have known, they might have been much more protective towards me. Another exposure of my parents is they've been exposed to DDT. At that time, a lot of people were spraying, and even, if I believe it, people were, or children were even playing in the kind of fog. It was nice, you run in and you run outside, you couldn't be seen. So really, nobody really thought about this kind of exposure. And even young people were being exposed to DDT. We know that the global use of DDT has been causing endocrine disrupting effects, and still it is being used in many places in the world. We still have a continued human exposure. Accumulating evidence suggests that DDT exposure has long-term effects on development again. Although we must say that the impact on growth and differentiation of our adult stem cells still remains in some way somewhat unclear, and further research is really needed to know what really can cause in that sense. Even more examples, people in the swimming pool being sprayed by DDT. The effects that we do know is that there is a predicted risk of daughter's breast cancer when people being exposed to DDT. So one of the conclusions is that prospective human study links measured DDT exposure in utero to a risk of breast cancer. And also we see that findings support the classification of DDT as an endocrine disruptor and a predictor of breast cancer and a marker of high risk. These are still some quite recent studies. And how can we explain that? We know that the exposure related to the mesenchymal stem cells provide a biological system that might cause these kind of effects. MSCs exposed to DDT demonstrated alterations in self-renewal, proliferation, differentiation, and gene expression, and that might be a partially explanation of the changes in the effect caused by DDT. There are other compounds, so being exposed to my parents to the different compounds, we also see that I might be also the one expressing effects in my children. So we even see some of these compounds mentioned here that they might lead to effects in the third or fourth generation. And that's something also to consider when we are looking at these kinds of exposures of toxics that we are dealing with nowadays. Another thing that my parents were exposed to was during the Second World War, when we had in the Netherlands, in the west part, a lack of food, what we call the hunger winter, and being stressed by lack of food, which caused also a kind of effect. We know that hunger during the period of pregnancy in utero, that there are correlated risks to cardiovascular diseases, obesity, metabolic syndrome, and diabetes. And also we know that the impacts of hunger has effects on the central nervous system disorder, so as mentioned here, neurotubular effects. Also there are studies that there are links to schizophrenia, and also we see that famine exposure associated with a twofold risk of schizophrenia later on in life in women who are 50 years and older. Also prenatal famine exposure in patients with schizophrenia was associated with a decreased volume of the brain. Another exposure, we see that, well, we as well ourselves, but also our parents have been exposed to a lot of different issues. They were smokers at that time, and like a lot of people at that time were smokers. If you didn't smoke, you didn't belong to society, more or less. Prenatal exposure to maternal cigarette smoking, we know now, has been associated with altered DNA methylation at birth, and also relations to elevated inattention, hyperactivity effects. So there are many more effects that, as me as a child, I have been exposed to my parents. Now I move to my point of view as being a scientist in this area. How do I do that? How do I look as a scientist to children's environmental health? What perspective do I choose? Do I choose one of those many topics that I just mentioned? Or do I try to take a global perspective? How do I see as a scientist the whole field of children's environmental health? Just a few slides on, if we look back into the time, life expectancy around the world in 1800, if you see almost everything was colored red, so that means that the life expectancy was hardly ever anywhere above the age of 40, 45 years of age. In 1950 that has already changed a lot, except for the Asian and African countries where the life expectancy was still low. In the Western world here it was much more raised. But if you look at 2011, almost the whole world has a very much higher life expectancy, which means that besides a lot of children, we have a lot of people with a lot of much higher population in the world, except maybe for life expectancy still some countries in Africa, but here we see that it has a dramatic change in the life expectancy. It also means that we see that the burden of disease on the population and on children has dramatically changed. I just give an example here of diarrhea-related diseases in children under the age of 5 years, 2008. You see that here, again, it's the main issue, main problem. So looking from a global perspective, as a medical doctor, I maybe should focus on research much more related to these countries, because we see that this kind of burden of disease is still prevalent in those countries. And we can have these different pictures of many more children's related diseases. If you look at the perspective of child mortality, still this is the figure of 2013, 6.3 million children under the age of 5 die. A large percentage of that is related to infectious diseases, but also a lot of them die in the neonatal period. The leading causes of that are preterm birth complications, pneumonia, and also complications during labor and delivery. So from that perspective, I think one of the issues that's in children's environmental health, which we don't study much really, is, for example, these kinds of effects. We tend to look a lot at air pollution, but we should not neglect these kinds of diseases as well, because that's where most children still die from. We see that there has been made some progress. There has been reductions in pneumonia, diarrhea, measles. So half of the fewer deaths of children are related to these kinds of reductions. If this trend continues, we still see, however, that 4.4 million children will still, under the age of 5, will still die in 2013 related to these causes. And that's, from my perspective, only goes well if we can consider the climate change as well. If we can't control that, these numbers might be much larger. And then we might end up with seeing a lot of children ending up as potential environmental refugees. They might be harmed by the climate change and maybe don't have many places to go anymore. Because what we see from the perspective from the climate change, that children are being exposed to extreme temperatures, disease burden, and young are vulnerable to the heat-related illnesses and deaths related to that. One of the issues is that the poverty, where people are poor, they lack the resources to protect them. They lack the resources to find adequate shelter or maybe basic access to locations where they can cool. So from a climate perspective, we might see that there might be a shift in children's environmental health related to also to climate change. For example, if you look at outdoor air, due to the industrialization and the polluting of transport, we did see a shift of the problems where the air pollution was. Did we mention the London smog several times? Now we see other areas where the mortality, the area of death of children is much greater in some of the other countries. So we do see a shift, although there are also some pockets, for example, here in Africa and Indonesia. Looking at outdoor pollution at children, so we do see a shift to other countries. We do see the extra burden on children, and millions of more children are going to be exposed by air pollution. But there's another issue, the occupational, like this picture was occupational exposure about more than 100 years ago when young guys were sent into the mines to work. But did we really make any progress? Because we still see millions of children being in an occupational setting. You can find hundreds of pictures of children being exposed to toxics in occupational settings. So did we really make any improvement? The other perspective, which I find very interesting, is to see how we can protect children from indoor air-related pollution. 50% of the world are still using coal biomass for domestic energy. And indoor air pollution may be responsible for 2 million excess deaths in developing countries and create something like 4% of the global burden of disease related to these kinds of exposures. Well, the question would be, as from my scientific perspective again, is this going to increase with urbanization trends, or are we going to be able to take care of and try to diminish this kind of energy source so that we can protect children better? And what kind of tools and what kind of methods should we employ to make sure that they are less exposed? Then, as a scientist, I also can have the perspective of more scientifically looking at the chronic or irreversible diseases or disorders. We do see a growing trend of children being victim of chronic diseases. The shift from acute diseases like the pneumonia, the infectious disease, diarrhea, is shifting more and more towards chronic and irreversible disease. So there are other issues as well that I could look at from a scientific point of view. We can look at autism, ADHD, we can look at childhood cancer, and we can look at obesity. Children like this, we see more and more. I don't know if you're aware, but which country really has the highest level of obesity? Anyone? For children? You want probably, it's Mexico. Mexico is really having the largest problem of obesity, mainly due to the fact that the children there, when they start very young, when they start drinking soda like Coca-Cola, and they all on average drink more than 1 or 2 liters of soda in Mexico in the cities. So a huge problem there as well. Moving to myself being a policymaker, as you see here, I'm president of different kinds of organizations and where we are relating to policy issues. As a policymaker, what do I see when I look at the world, and what do I want to see, and what do I want to see as a policymaker communicating with the scientific community, and what does the scientist really tell me of what, as a policymaker, I should do? If I look at the world, I see a lot of political and environmental stress. I see wars, I see water problems, I see waste problems, I see issues related to climate change. I see a lot of wars and conflicts where children are all being exposed and are victim of these issues. So we do see a lot of children on the move, related to, again, war, water, waste, poverty, and climate issues. This is a graph where we are looking at the world population. We are in 2015 with 7.3 billion. Looking at, for example, 2030, where there will be 8.5 billion people in the world. Out of those, there will be about 2 billion children between the age of 0 and 14 years of age. So how can we take care of these 2 billion children with all the effects and all the hazards that I just showed? So what if out of this 1.2 extra million children, say that 1 billion children in 2030 are potential environmental refugees? As a policymaker, what do I then want to know from the scientific community? How can I prevent this? How can I prevent that this enormous amount of children will be on the move, will have to flee different parts of the world because of all the problems that are there? Looking at this slide related to the world and what is happening, all the yellow parts are the parts where there will be more desertification, droughts. The purple is all areas where we will see more and more frequent hurricanes. The blue are the areas where we have flooding issues, and you can't see it, but also in the Pacific here there are areas where some islands will totally disappear due to the rising sea level. So all these areas are areas maybe as a policymaker I would like to focus on, because those are the areas where I will see children being victimized by the different changes going to happen in climate change. These children being under influence of all these different factors, but then I wonder as a policymaker, who has the power? Who has the ability to change something? Is it only the politicians? Is it the policymaker? Or is it also the scientific community or the population at large? How are we going to do that? Who is going to control the temperature on the Earth? And if we look at the pictures before, who is in need of all this plastic and how can we deal with that? And there are other topics. I can talk housing, I can talk about energy, so there are different issues here. If I, as a policymaker, focus on research, then I'm pleased to say, okay, I see more research going on in the exposome world, exposome research. Does that provide us answers to all the previous problems that I see? Do we have to look and put a lot of energy, and do I have to spend my research money as a policymaker on work on epigenetics, where I do see that there are issues related to malnutrition, chemicals, and mental stress? Is that where I should focus on? Or should I focus on getting control on the corporate business? Going back in history, this is again on the DES, on DAS. At that time there were big advertisements of how well this DES was good for the world, how we should use it. This is the same as where we are still having problems with asbestos. All the red countries are the countries where we are still producing and selling and using asbestos. These kind of pictures of corporate influence I can also make for many other different kinds of chemicals. How can we, or should I as a policy, focus on getting control of corporate business? Yesterday we saw a lot of case studies where companies were hiding files, were lying. How should we control that? Again, in order to protect the children of the future. For example, if you look at that again, that was a really complete breakdown of the regulatory and scientific process. There was a complete disregard of patient safety, the data were manipulated or disregarded. The monitoring was done by private firms hired by the companies, and the conflicts of interest were there as well, involving research institutions. And these kind of examples are there for other companies nowadays as well. That didn't change much. So as a policy maker, maybe I should put my effort in here, and maybe I can make the best health profit by trying to regulate more issues. For example, if you look at the amount that companies, here are just a few of the big worldwide companies, if you see the amount of money, like here, 4 billion millions of money spent only on advertising, that's not the kind of money that we have in the scientific community. I think we all would be happy just to have a small amount of all this money spent on advertising, to spend it on really on additional research or on regulating different kinds of businesses. Looking at policymaking on the climate change, I see that UNICEF is telling me that there are about 175 million children that are being driven by poverty and are hit by climate disasters every year. Due to their poverty, due to the places where they live, they will be hit much harder by climate change. So as a policymaker, maybe I should cooperate more with the scientific community, with the physicians. We need to cooperate, but we also need to do it across different disciplines, across different countries, different sectors. We should really involve industry and agriculture, and also we should talk much more openly with politicians. And that's not only me as a policymaker, but I think that is also something, this is also true for the scientific community to do that. So my aim as a policymaker would be to tell physicians and epidemiologists that environmental chemicals do cause different disease, and also in order to protect children better, that these exposures may have already occurred very early in their development, maybe even prenatally, maybe even before conception. So I have to tell the researchers that they need to work on the long-term prevention and looking at the bigger pictures, all in order to prevent that all these millions of children that I mentioned before, that they will become refugees as well in the future. So considerations are that health is a long-term benefit for society. If we have a healthy society, we have a healthy population of children and of humans. Children can also be considered as an insurance for prosperity. If you have healthy children, you have a good prosperity for your nation. And also, we should see that children's happiness lies in our hands, and in the message that we are going to take, the decisions that we are going to take, and the communication that we are dealing with the different disciplines. So, although I see that there are 1,000 problems, and probably we have together 1,000 thoughts on how to deal with these problems, and there might be 1,000 ways to 1,000 cures to solve that, I think there is only one wish, and I would like to conclude with that, is that let's think about the children, and let's think about how we can protect children and environmental health in the future. Thank you very much.
Um, 1990. So let me report to you the infant mortality in Taiwan reduced to about 40%. Still a little bit different, but we are trying to make it better. And before the Q&A, I would like to, on behalf of the organizing committee, to present to you a souvenir.
Okay.
We have about 10 minutes of Q&A. Is any question? I think it's a very important issue that I think most of the audience here are policymaker related role, either as a policymaker by themselves or policymaker related scientists. So it's really an important issue that we can help the policymaker to make good policy to improve children's health. And you might have heard that we have a issue here that related lead pollution in the water supply here. Yeah, the water pipe here. Yeah. I think the impact may be not so great, but it could have some impact because we did observe a little bit increased rate of ADHD here. And it could be a very, I think it's it should be a very complicated issue, but how can we, because when we have, for example, our government has this kind of problem exposed, and how we scientists can help to solve this kind of problem is a very complicated issue. And when we look at just one corner, we might have misleading results. Could you help us to how to find out the approach?
Well, I think we have enough knowledge for lead exposure and the effects it has on health, well, in children specifically. So I think the simple solution would be try to get rid of the exposure. And,
yes. Okay, so look at first and then find out the impact later.
Yeah, but I think we have still seen lead popping up, and I think I skipped one slide there. There was still a problem also in other countries where we have still lead exposure, either in mining or the battery industry. Lead pipes are still an issue in some parts of the world. So it's one of those issues that keep popping up, like asbestos. Lead is also something that keeps popping up. We do know the effects, so we do know that it is something that we should stop, but there is a large economic burden, and that's, I think, the main issue. Who is responsible, because some of these issues have been caused by people that don't exist or companies that don't exist anymore. So it's something that we, for many of these problems, we have to discuss with each other who is responsible for these problems. How are we sharing the responsibility to take care of it? Because we know the solution. If you have a lead problem, you have to replace the lead pipe by other material, and then you don't have the problem anymore. But who is going to pay for it? Who is going to take the first step? And that's a big issue. And as long as we don't have strict regulation on that, then it's sometimes difficult. So, but I don't say that regulation is always the solution. It's also communication. We need to communicate. You have to make clear to the politicians that it is really an issue. And what I said here, if your children's health is not good, you will lack prosperity in your country. You will see that there will be economic downfalls later on anyway, because you have children that have a less mental capacity, you have children much more visiting hospitals. So in the end, the costs are coming always later, and the costs are always then larger than when you spend it now in trying to solve the problem. So that's a mental thing for policymakers and mainly politicians, I think, to make that decision. Because it's not really a visible problem. If you have a visible problem of people go to a hospital, they get medication, and they walk out of the hospital cured, that's visible. But if you want to cure children from lead exposure, first of all, you don't see it that quickly that they are being exposed to what you see. So you can't say a politician, look, this child, he's drinking water now, not from a lead pipe, and now he walks out of the hospital, he's not sick anymore. We can't show that. And by not being able to show that to politicians, it makes them, well, why should I bother about it? Let somebody else worry about it. The visibility of the problems related to a lot of the issues I talk here, that's the main thing. How can we make it visible? And we have graphics, but mainly we have our convention to convince politicians to spend the money on these issues.
Yeah, that's the duty of government.
I think. Well, it also gives you scientists to communicate.
Yes.
Well, thank you for that. Again, very inspiring talk. There is a huge problem in the state. I don't think that there's a way to solve this problem, which is that we look at the school lunch. By average, about $1.75 to feed a kid in the elementary school in the state, whereas we spend $4, $5 to buy coffee in Starbucks. So we try to figure out how to sort of like move the money from buying coffee to pay for the school lunch. But the politician has very resistant to impose additional tax or bring the existing tax dollar to fund the school lunch. But I can assure everybody that if you go to one of the elementary schools in the state and look at what kind of lunch they serve, nobody want to eat it. But we feed our kids from Monday through Friday. So what is the solution? Obviously, the politician, most of the politicians in the state, especially Boston, for some reason, they don't send their kids to public school. If you think about Massachusetts, is the state of the higher education. The state itself has a worse public school system. And nobody goes to University of Massachusetts. If your high school kids go to University of Massachusetts, your kids are losers. So politicians in Massachusetts distance themselves from supporting public school. And to some degree, I think Taiwan also going to the same direction, that school lunch become, you're lucky you get a lunch. You don't ask for more.
But is there no communication between the health community and the school community about this?
Oh yeah. The school always said that we need money to pay for school lunch. However, the government regularly cut. I mean, think about Seattle, for example. They just has a boycott by the teacher because the union cannot reach any agreement with the school district. They were talking about somewhere around $250,000 differences, and they cut the school off for almost 6 days.
Or maybe a solution is for Jamie Oliver from the UK. He seems to be able to change some of the school meals recently.
Yes.
Briefly comment on that. We also had in Germany, we also had a debate on that, whether we should provide warm, healthy meals for our children in the schools. And there was a pilot study, a rather big one, in one of the German states. And they invested a lot of money to improve, to provide healthy meals. What came out is the children did not accept the healthy meals, and even the parents complained because the children coming home, they are hungry, they did not eat very well, and so the question is, there are different perspectives, right? There's also the perspective and the responsibility of the families. The families and the parents have to take care for healthy food to their children. This is not only a responsibility of the politicians and the government, it's also the families and the parents are important stakeholders for this development. Thank you.
I do agree, because researchers disclose that the eating habits during infancy have very strong link to the eating behavior when the children grow up. Yeah. So we need to take care of how to the preparation process for infant such as supplement bags.
Thank you so much, Dr. Peter. I am Matt from NTU. My question is, how do we engage or see to it that the private corporations that you talked about are held accountable? Because you made mention of the case of Abesto. And I understand that the private corporations are becoming too powerful now. That we're now seeing what I can term as corporatization of the state. They are more powerful than the state. So how do we really engage them to see to it that some of the issues that you pointed out outside.
Yes, well, let's make ourselves the government of the world, and maybe you can change it. Yeah, that's a difficult question. I think it has to do with all of us taking responsibility. I think there is in a lot of countries, a lot of people, the scientific community, but also private citizens, don't take the responsibility anymore to take care of their own environment, to take care of their own life in the sense of thinking about it, how to deal with the problems they are being faced with. And I don't know if that's because we are being exposed to too many chemicals and that our brain is not functioning anymore, or that it is just the complexity of society that a lot of people find it too complicated to discuss and to talk about these kinds of issues. One thing would be that we need to communicate again with our local councils, our local politicians, and I think I see in a lot of countries people don't do that, or they don't get the chance to do that. And because the influence, I'm working also for a lobby organization in Brussels with the EU. We have about one person from the scientific community facing about 50 persons lobbying for industry. So there's really a big disbalance there, and they try to regulate it a bit by saying, okay, they're not allowed to have too many of the companies compared to lobbyists from other organizations. So they try to regulate it a little bit, but even then, the amount of money being spent, that's why I had the sheet there showing the amount of money being spent for advertising and etc. That's a battle that we can hardly win unless there is enough consciousness among the policymakers, politicians to give an even share to other opinions as well. Yeah, well, let's keep talking about it to people and to the politicians about. But yeah, I don't have a ready solution, but we have to keep continuing to try it.
Thank you so much. Well, another question is more scientific.
Oh, yeah, thank you so much. I think one approach, like you said, could be advocacy. We can just keep advocating. Yeah, thank you so much.
Another question more scientific in policy is quality of breast. We've been holding breast milk for almost 20 years. I think last year there was a book published by New York Times journalist that she sampled a very limited of a breast milk sample in a state, and she found lots of chemicals. The chemical is like DDT and pesticides. So the question is that as a scientist, as a public health practitioner, like a children's hospital, how should we look at this issue? If we have a cross-sectional, analysis of breast milk, looking at Dutch women, United States or Taiwan, and we come up with this long, dirty list of chemicals that found in the breast milk that we feed our infants on a meal basis.
Yeah, no, I still think breast is best. I think that's still the best solution, because also the alternatives, they're not free of chemicals either. So it's still the breast milk, which has a lot of other compounds that are useful and necessary for the child. So I think we still, from the scientific community, we still stick to the breast milk feeding is still the best. But we can give, alongside that, we can give warnings to young mothers to maybe try to be less exposed to all different compounds related to that. So you can try to reduce it as much as possible, the contamination with different chemicals. But yeah, it's choosing between two bad things. But I think we should promote breastfeeding as the best solution. Or solution, the best option.
Yes, education to the young kids and also teenagers. Yeah. And thank you again, for such a wonderful talk.